Hi everyone, Crub here. Thanks so much for listening to episode 1 of Crub's Curiosities. This is an American history podcast meant to feel something like opening an old trunk in the attic of your grandpa's house and finding all sorts of cool stuff. And also maybe some things you didn't want to see. Not like that. Just maybe Pops wasn't exactly a great guy. Think of like an I Spy book's pages, but instead of thimbles and dried butterflies, there are bone fragments and a gun that looks suspiciously like the one that you saw pictured in the newspaper article about that serial killer who never got caught 20 years ago. Anyway, I digress. My goal for this podcast is to take a look at the darker spectacles of American history. From serial killers to robber barons, world wars, and more. We're going to try and cover all that is macabre from this fading empire's short history, each week with special guests. I hope you enjoy this trip into my box of curiosities. Blizz, how familiar are you with The Greatest Showman?
I want to fuck Hugh Jackman.
All right. So pretend we just started. I didn't have you introduce yourself. Blizz.
Oh.
So Blizz, what do you do?
I do drugs.
Where can we find you doing drugs?
I'm a Twitch streamer. I'm just a little guy on the internet. You can find me at twitch.tv/Blizz if you like watching true crime. If you like body cam footage, if you like playing video games, if you just want to talk about your day, I'm going to be your guy. So come hang out. I don't do drugs. I think it's a lie, but I actually am a virgin. Don't know where we go with that.
That was you being damn near 30 saying you're a little guy, then mentioning body cam footage, then saying you're a virgin. That was an unreal intro.
This is whiplash. I am giving everyone I am content whiplash. That's the problem.
So, Blizz, earlier we were kind of talking about how I feel that P.T. Barnum was the perfect choice for this first episode of the show. I kind of wanted to go through quickly with you why I chose P.T. Barnum for the audience to hear as well. So I was kind of inspired to do this when I went to this place in my home state of Michigan a few weeks ago with my wife. It's called Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum. This place has this guy that made it a few years ago, I guess decades ago, I should say, back in the 80s. And it has all this like animatronic and sideshow history housed within its walls. You've got like old Chuck E. Cheese animatronics. You've got like the old like racially ambiguous fortune tellers inside, like the animatronic ones that you'd put a penny in and it would tell you your fortune. Figurines.
It's not racially ambiguous, just so you know. Like it's from a section of the country. You just don't know where. Like, sorry, a part of the countries outside of the U.S. They're not U.S. You can tell.
Well,
That's
I know
why you invited me on this, right?
No, I know that, but it's a poor representation of those cultures. So you could say it's ambiguous because it's not a very good representation.
We can just say racist.
Or I'm just fucking stupid. We can just say that
racist.
Too. Just say I'm ignorant. Just say I'm culturally ignorant. That's fine. What I noticed was in there that got me thinking about P.T. Barnum, who is a figure that I have no familiarity with. Prior to this episode, I had known nothing about him other than just like he had a circus back in the 1900s. That's like basically all I knew, Barnum and Bailey's Circus. I didn't even really know about anything else that he did. I kind of knew that he was involved with like the sideshow industry, but that was it. But while I was in there, I noticed there was this replica of something called the Cardiff Giant. And it's this gigantic giant, like the mythical creature of a giant, corpse that was used by a con artist named David Hannum in the 1800s to get crowds of people to come see it. You know, he charged people to come see it, claim it was real. It looks like it's made out of like paper mache. I think when I looked into it, it was like whale blubber or something.
Oh.
It looks like a charred corpse, but like very large. Like a really, it's not like gross looking. It's just like, it looks like a really bad paper mache. You can like look it up if you want. It's the Cardiff Giant. Barnum could not buy this Cardiff Giant from this guy. He tried to do it for years and years and years during his career, and the guy never sold it to him. So he hired a sculptor to create a plaster copy of the giant to display himself. So the one that I saw was made of plaster. That replica that Barnum used, because that guy wouldn't sell it to him, was actually at this museum. Once I noticed this replica, I was looking around and I saw there were signs everywhere that said Marvin was heavily inspired to be a member of the entertainment industry, or catalog all this entertainment history that was in his, within the walls of this museum because of P.T. Barnum. And I started thinking about it. I was like, I don't know anything about P.T. Barnum, which is kind of weird because we're in the entertainment industry. It's strange that I know nothing about him. I was fascinated by this guy's obsession with the entertainment industry's history, something that I knew basically nothing about. In many ways, you and I are not so different than the people that worked in the entertainment industry back in Barnum's era, Like, they were doing...
Well, I don't know about that one. Well, no, the reason you did bring me on the show, you were like, Blizz, you remind me of P.T. Barnum. And I was like, oh, okay. Don't know what that means, man. But hopefully it means something good.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, you guys aren't so different at all. This is going to sound... Dude, the first story about him is going to tear this apart. It's going to be insane that you said that after this first story.
Is he like racist?
I don't even know if that is like strong enough of a term to categorize what I'm about to tell you about him. Is
he like a serial killer? No spoilers.
Not in the traditional sense.
I'll go along the ride.
We'll get into it.
Not in the traditional sense. What does that mean?
We'll get into it. So the reason I say that, though, in seriousness, is because what Barnum was doing and what people are, in his era were doing, they were capturing crowds with live entertainment. Some of it pre-planned, of course, but they were capturing the attention of crowds. They were part of the culture industry, and many credit Barnum as the creator of this culture industry. However, we do differ from Barnum in many other ways. There are probably way more ways that you and I differ from Barnum, despite being in the same industry that is now modernized. We do differ a lot. Barnum.
It's not the racism, though. Like, we're both racist, like, obviously. But interesting. Okay.
We're going to get this first podcast shut down, man.
Hey, dude, you shouldn't have put me on. That's on you.
Man. Barnum's past is marred with a lot of controversy, very rightfully so, which you'll see when we start talking about this. So this felt like a perfect place to start the show. The show is based on controversial figures, events, and ideas from American history. So Barnum was really the perfect place to start. So it's time to set the stage. 1830s New York. Blizz, you know anything about 1830s New York?
I thought you were going to be like, where were you in 1830?
Well, that's what I'm asking. Where were you?
Dude, you would not believe the theater I was in. I saw Abraham Lincoln and John Wilkes Booth. I don't know if that's the same time.
I think you're like 35 years off, but
okay.
You're not that far. This is actually pre-Civil War, which is something that I didn't know about Barnum. I did not know Barnum was that old of a figure. 1830s New York is the stage I'm trying to set here. It's a really prude culture, really prude period in American history. Entertainment in 1830s America reflected that. As you probably know, even not knowing much about Barnum at all, Barnum is often considered a progenitor of American culture and entertainment industry. He was one of the first to create this kind of corporatized entertainment that we know in the 21st century. The world that existed prior to Barnum coming into it was devoid of much of what we would consider entertainment today. People of all classes and professions were affixed to this belief that it was more prideful to spend time in church than anywhere amusement was happening. This is true in both small podunk towns and large metropolises like New York. You had blue laws in place, which prevented certain activities like drinking or shopping from happening on Sundays or other religious holidays. And overall, the world was pretty bleak. It was very, very restrained. Theaters and performance art exhibitions were considered satanic worshiping events by many, and even sports had little to no footing at this point in history. The Yankees wouldn't exist for another 70 years, so you really lacked a lot of the things that we think of when we think of modern entertainment.
So God was the reason that they didn't want to do anything.
God said no baseball.
God was the reason that they were boring. God said there's nothing in the rule book that says a dog can't play baseball. For some reason, my brain went there. God is against dogs playing baseball. You just heard it here.
There was no Air Bud in 1830s New
No
York.
Air Bud. That's so messed up, but also like, no, that makes sense because like usually when people start pushing God down other people's throats, like everything is boring. So I get it.
Yeah, then this a lot of it was based on the religious belief of Calvinism, which was that fate
fuck
was
is Calvin?
Calvinism is a sect of Christianity that is not popular in the modern era that I'm aware of, at least. But it is a very fundamentalist sect of Christianity which believes in predestination. The moment you are born, your fate is determined. It also disparages any sort of hedonism, right, which includes entertainment or fun. That belief was very prevalent in this era of America. But Barnum was born on July 5th, 1810, in the small town of Bethel, Connecticut. His full name was Phineas Taylor Barnum, after his maternal grandfather. Phineas is a biblical name, which means brazen mouth. Very fitting for Barnum, you'll find later on throughout there.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, maybe.
You said that in a weird way, and I think what you meant was like maybe he just says like aggressive shit, or he's whoring his mouth. Because that's what I was like, brazen mouth. Okay, they used to call me that in college. Like, what the heck?
I'm not gonna spoil it. I'm not. What kind of show would it be if I spoiled it?
I hope there's dick sucking. All right, continue.
Just a little foreplay there. Barnum's father was Philo Barnum. He had 10 children by 2 wives, and Phineas was was the 6th child from his second marriage.
How do you spell Philo?
Philo.
Is it Philo?
It might be Philo. It might be now that I'm I like the way that's pronounced better too. It's a little okay. You know what?
It's Philo.
I think Philo makes a little bit more. You're right. I'm glad you told me that. Okay, so Philo, Barnum's father adopted a style of labor which was much like PT in his later labor endeavors when he got to his 20s and 30s, which was drifting job to job. He worked as a farmer, tailor, tavern keeper, and grocer. His father's father was a militiaman in the Revolutionary War who he had little to no relationship with, but on Barnum's maternal side, he had a fantastic relationship with his grandfather, who he actually derived his middle namesake from. Taylor adored Phineas, and Phineas looked up to him as a great practical joker. Phineas said his grandfather would, quote, work harder and contrive deeper to carry out a practical joke than for anything else under heaven. And this funny streak kind of saved Barnum from being indoctrinated by this puritanical theocracy which existed in his town at the time. Around him, arrest by deacon was very common. The church would just come and arrest you for shit. And people were often arrested for things as simple as playing cards together. Once again, no entertainment.
Oh.
That shit is no poker, no balatro, no sex. Not allowed. Barnum's mother was fully prescribed to this ideology. But his grandfather, who was her father, was a dissenter, and he rebelled against this Calvinistic belief with the only legal entertainment available, which was the practical joke. For example, on a long ship ride, all his crewmates forgot their razors, and they begged to use his razor to shave. He said it would be impossible for them all to shave before they hit landfall, so that they should each shave half of their face with the razor and pass it to the next man. That way it'd be a much smoother process of shaving once they actually did hit land. They agreed, and when it finally got back to Taylor, he threw the razor overboard. The entire platoon entered the city with clean faces on one side and huge, scraggly sea beards on the other. So dude was he was cooking.
So he's a dick.
He's like kind of a dick, but I mean, that's pretty funny. It's just a bunch of military dudes getting out there and, a bunch of fucking perverts probably. They were all horned up from being on the ship and they got off and, nobody wants to fuck them afterwards. I think that's probably a good thing. Why
are they horned up?
I don't know. I
Is
feel
that
like
what
that's
being at sea
I
does to
I don't
people?
know. I guess you're like, I just assume that everybody in this era is like a disgusting pervert. And if you're like, all cramped up on a
Jesus,
boat
man.
for like a month, it gets you kind of horned up. I don't know.
Hey, listeners, I want you to remember, in this story, every time a name is mentioned, just imagine them horned up and everything that's going on. Hopefully, there's nothing inappropriate in this.
Yeah, nothing at all. Not at all. Taylor's tomfoolery was not held back against his loved ones either. It wasn't just friends that he did these practical jokes to. It was his family. When Phineas was born, Taylor pulled a joke on him at his christening. He gifted him a deed to a seemingly mythical property named Ivy Island, which he called one of the most valuable farms in the state. It was 5 whole acres of land being gifted to this newborn baby. When Barnum was 10, his father finally caved to his wishes to see his inheritance and took him to visit this island, only to find that it was a barren piece of unusable land that was extremely difficult to get to. No roads led to it. It was out in like the middle of these barren woods that no one ever ventured out to. Everyone who had been gassing up this plot of land to him had been on the joke, including family, friends, and townfolk. Taylor had gone to everyone, told them about this, spread the word, and literally played a practical joke on his grandson from the moment he had exited the womb.
He's a dick. He literally, no, this is Barnum's bully was his grandfather. And then bullies create bullies. And so, like, if Barnum's a bad person, which I'm assuming he is since we're talking about him today, his grandfather is the reason for that.
It's really interesting, right? Because they have a really good relationship. And it's not like, at least from what I read, he does do shit like this, which is problematic. And like, definitely like, playing this kind of joke on an infant is insane. It is brutal. But a lot of people think that this trickery and humiliation that he put Barnum through is a big reason that Barnum had such a penchant for fooling others in his adulthood. I'm not saying it was a bad thing, but I am saying it did make him one of the most, at least from a monetary perspective, successful men in American history. As Barnum grew up, he realized he despised intense physical labor by working with his father in the fields when his father was in this farming job that he had bounced to. However, when he came of age, his first job was at his father's newly opened grocery store, where he learned to bargain and clerk, which he was much better at than physical labor. At age 15, Barnum's father, Philo, died at age 48.
No, wait a second. Hold on. Do you have it written out, like, not abbreviated, but like the enunciated pronunciation?
No, I don't. It wasn't in the book that I read.
Because the way you stopped was you looking like you needed to rewrite something.
No. It was
I'm like, did you?
It was because you told me the name. Because I want to say, when I was reading it, I read the book and I kept reading his name as Philo. But like you told me it was Philo, so I was trying to catch myself before I said it wrong.
No. Reverse it. You said Philo, and I went, no, like Philo dough.
Philo. No, Philo. Wait, you're right. You're right.
Philo
Oh my God,
dough,
I don't know. Philo.
Or I'm assuming philosopher. So like Philo.
Yes. Philosopher, I guess, makes more sense. Yeah. Okay. All right. I got it. Okay. All right. Okay. I got it now.
Watch us be wrong.
We're going to be wrong. No matter what happens, we're going to be wrong. There's a literally.
Doesn't matter. This whole episode's going to be wrong.
Philo died at age 48, which bankrupted the family and left Phineas as the sole breadwinner. He found a job at a nearby general goods store, and this is where he performed his first stunt, his first publicity stunt that he ever did. Barnum purchased a wagon load of empty green bottles from a traveling peddler behind his boss's back. He scammed the peddler, though, in order to acquire them. He traded the peddler unsellable products he had marked up to fake high prices, so like out-of-date flour and candy that had gone stale. And he got all these bottles that the peddler had. They were just empty green bottles. They weren't really worth too much on their own. His employer, when he did find out, was really agitated. There were a ton of bottles in boxes in the back of his store that he had no room for. He now had to sell these bottles, and it was a ridiculous amount of bottles. He claimed there was enough for every person in the town. But Barnum had a plan. He conducted a lottery like he had seen done at his local church and mentioned to participants of the town that they could buy a ticket to this lottery and win anywhere from $5 to $25 in goods from the store, selected at the discretion of the store. Many people won. 1 and 2 tickets were winners, but every single winner walked away with a various amount of empty green bottles. So he didn't sell them. He essentially gamified it to turn these worthless products into like an experiential, an experience. He was selling an experience, which you can begin to see who he is becoming, even at this young age.
And his grandfather created this, so...
Yes, yeah, very much so. Yes, his grandfather kind of created this monster. You know, it's funny now, but it's not so funny later on.
I don't think it's funny, okay? I think scamming people is pretty bad.
Come on, it's kind of funny, though. It's kind of funny. It's like, you know, you take the church's lottery method and you scam these people out of, a few bucks. It's kind of funny. Walking home with
a few bucks back then was like $100.
That's true. I guess that's true. All right. Okay.
Now
maybe
the guy that he lied about the items you can't provide for his family, and now they're dead.
Okay,
now
but
dead.
He's also, but his dad just died. Okay, he's going through some grief right now.
Okay, just because his dad died doesn't mean that he gets to do this shit.
I'm trying to give him a pass now because later it gets so much worse. It's so
You're
much
playing
worse.
Devil's advocate, and it's not good for him.
It's so much worse later. I know it's not good for him. I know. So Barnum was clearly talented, at least in this regard, for scamming. And after he had made some money for himself, he and the family moved to a more metropolitan center so that he could clerk at a higher level. His grandfather feared that he would never return home due to his potential, so he offered him half of his carriage house back in Bethel, where Barnum was born, and capital to establish a business if he decided to return home. Barnum took this deal immediately, returned home, and met his wife when he was 16 and she was 18. They started a grocery store together, and it quickly grew in this little town. Barnum's wife's parents didn't like him and thought that she was altogether too good for Barnum. Barnum's mother didn't really care for Charity, his wife, either, and warned Phineas against marrying her. However, when they did eventually get married, Barnum's mother forgave him and showed grace to the couple after they secretly ran off to be married in New York City. I think obviously, based on the last story, Barnum began to gain a bit of a controversial reputation in Bethel as he succeeded in running his grocery store. He had become relatively wealthy and decided to start his own local newspaper after serving as an editor for the weekly, which he felt was being muzzled by the local puritanical church. He became a fierce critic of the church's illicit activities and poor attitude towards human freedoms, which came to a head when he accused a local deacon, Seth Seeley, of usury of a local orphan boy. So I looked up what usury means because I was like, I immediately thought like, okay, yeah, the worst thing possible, right? I'm not 100% sure what he meant by that, though. I tried to look up exactly what it meant, and there wasn't a lot of information on this. But what usury means in the literal sense is that you lend someone money at an unreasonably high rate of interest, right? So apparently he gave this like orphan kid like a payday loan basically, and gave him this like super ridiculous high interest loan. But based on how Barnum writes in later writings, he's very dry and sarcastic. So I think he might have been accusing the priest of something more nefarious, which obviously you can probably infer based on the way that he worded it.
Yeah, unless it's like a little Orphan Annie situation where, well, no, because he's not being adopted. Never mind.
I don't think he was adopted. Maybe he like brought him to work. I don't know. There wasn't a lot of information here.
He brought an orphan boy to work is so weird for this man. I'm sorry, man.
I am. This guy's way worse. Okay, this guy. He was doing something fishy. All right, that's all it is. So this deacon that Barnum had accused had him jailed for 60 days for libel. It kind of backfired. This persecution of Barnum made him a bit of a local hero. Now, this is disputed on how much fanfare there actually was. There was no disputing that Barnum's newspaper had gained readers who subscribed in 15 states total. His writing resonated so much that he was delivered food and gifts in prison. And when he was finally released, there was a massive parade thrown for him down the main street of the town. However, eventually, this little town didn't have any more scandals for Barnum to report, and he nearly went bankrupt. The newspaper didn't have any juicy gossip anymore. In a last-ditch effort, he and his wife Charity moved to New York again with their newly born infant daughter Caroline to seek Barnum's fortune. After bouncing around from a few jobs in New York and collecting final debts from his Bethel neighbors, his first big break was about to happen. Yeah, this is where we're going to get... Oh my God. Barnum is so interesting because like the first big thing he did is from what I've read thus far, quite possibly the worst thing he ever did. Which is kind of nuts. From like a direct human morality perspective, I think this is probably his worst act. Barnum is bouncing around jobs in New York, right? And he had finally settled down a little bit and opened a small grocery store with a partner named John Moody. And he was supplementing his income by running a boarding house with his wife. One day at the store, while he was working, an old neighbor and regular customer, Coley Bartram, entered. Coley was chatting with Barnum and remembered that Barnum was fascinated by speculative business investments. He told Barnum about one R.W. Lindsay, who is a former partner who went halvesies with Bartram on the purchase of an apparently 161-year-old slave woman who Lindsay was currently exhibiting as an entertainment attraction in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah, I forgot it's the time of slaves. Totally forgot about that. I was like, slaves?
Wait,
we're not.
When did that happen? It's
what?
like, yeah, it's 1830.
Could you believe if I was like a slavery denier? Slaves? What do you mean?
I'm shocked. I'm shocked that is not a widespread belief in modern America. Slavery. I'm surprised slavery denial. I'm sure there are. Yeah, there definitely are some people. I am surprised it's not even more widespread. I shouldn't even manifest this. Jesus Christ.
You shouldn't. With the times that we are in right now, why would you? Why would you do that?
I don't know. I just thought of it. Okay. So this guy that comes into his store owns half of this slave who is being exhibited as an attraction and advertised as being 161 years old. Bartram had gotten tired of promoting this project of his and had sold his shares recently to his partner. Lindsay felt like he had no showmanship and wanted to return to his home in Kentucky and get off the road. He was tired of traveling around with his exhibit and presenting the show to people. He wasn't good at it. So Coley proposed a sale of the woman to Barnum. Barnum had a hard time finding satisfaction in this day job that he held, so he spent a lot of time looking through the paper for employment ads. In his searches, he'd recalled that he had actually seen a clipping promoting this exhibition that Coley was currently trying to sell to him. And Coley showed him this during the sale proposal. It read, and I quote, this is dated July 15th, 1835. Curiosity. The citizens of Philadelphia and its vicinity have an opportunity of witnessing at the Masonic Hall one of the greatest natural curiosities ever witnessed. Joyce Heth, a N-word gress, aged 161 years, who formerly belonged to the father of General Washington. She has been a member of the Baptist Church 116 years and can rehearse many hymns and sing them according to former custom. She was born near the old Potomac River in Virginia and has for 90 or 100 years lived in Paris, Kentucky, with the Bowling family. All who have seen this extraordinary woman are satisfied of the truth of the account of her age, the evidence of the Bowling family, which is respectable, strong, but the original bill of sale of Augustine Washington in its own handwriting and other evidence which the proprietor has in his possession will satisfy even the most incredulous. So they're promoting this woman as a nurse to George Washington. Washington would have been born, 1776 is the revolution. I don't know Washington's exact date off the top of my head, but 1730s, so it matches up that she would have been in her 50s or 60s when she was caring for baby George Washington.
I will not do the math, and I will not check her on that math. This is like a modern day shout out, you know?
Yeah, kind of. It's sort of.
She got a shout out, and they even used a slur like that. That's basically Twitch. It
is. I'm telling you, man, there are an unfortunate amount of parallels here. So Barnum was intrigued by this bill of sale, right? He was intrigued by how this exhibit was being presented as well. It piqued his the marketing piqued his curiosity. He was intrigued and arranged to go see the fabulous Heth in Philadelphia. While the obvious issue with Joyce Heth's exhibit was the purchase, ownership, and display of a human being, the other major issue with her exhibition was the intense elder abuse she was suffering at the hands of her captors. When Barnum met her, her legs were raised when she sat, about 2 feet in the air, due to some disease, some unknown disease, and or old age. And she was unable to move from that position. She was essentially paralyzed. She could only move one of her arms at will. She was fully blind, and her eyes were so severely sunken in you could barely tell she had eyes.
Oh my God, that's just it. Oh my God.
It is horrible. This is one of the worst descriptions I've ever seen. According to Barnum, she had no teeth, But modern medical ethicist and author Harriet Washington theorizes in her book that it's more likely Barnum forcefully extracted her teeth to make her look older. Her finger and toenails had grown long and curled. She had a head of thick, bushy gray hair. She was likely suffering from dementia, fear of retribution from her owners, or both. Heth enchanted Barnum when he met her. Despite her physical ailments, she joyously recounted her time raising, quote unquote, dear little George and singing hymns.
Was she actually like 160 years old, or?
So we'll get to that. This is a very this is the biggest part of this story is Heth's.
She's like 18.
Yes.
And you're like wild. Sorry. Okay.
Yes.
We'll get there. We'll get there. She better
Can
not
you
be
imagine?
18.
She's just like in prosthetic to make her look old. She's not. She's like just like a young adult in CGI at 1830. Okay, so after meeting Heth, Barnum talked to Lindsay about some sort of proof of her age. Lindsay said he had proof. It was a yellowing bill of sale document from 1727, which stated that Heth had been sold by Washington's father to his sister-in-law, witnessed by them both. Apparently, George Washington's father, Washington Sr., had then temporarily borrowed Heth back from his sister-in-law when Washington Jr. was born to help care for him. I think, this is my opinion, Barnum likely knew this was horseshit. He was morally bankrupt, but he wasn't an idiot. And I guess no one really knows. No one really knows whether it was, whether this was realistically a thing. And Barnum really was that easily swayed by Lindsay's proposal, or whether he knew what he was doing and was about to run a scam. But if he did know this, he knew it would be very easy to pass off if he had a canned answer to likely common questions. So he pressed Lindsay a little bit more. His other question to Lindsay was, why has no one heard of such a remarkably old woman existing until now? The answer from Lindsay was simple. She had been living quietly in an outhouse of one of her former owners for years. Nobody cared to ask how old she truly was. It was the unfortunate benefit of her being a black slave. Lindsay was her owner's neighbor in Kentucky, and when he saw her, he saw an opportunity. Initially, Lindsay had offered to sell Heth to Barnum for $3,000, which is like it's just over $100,000 in today's money.
Oh my God.
So it's can't really put worth on a human being at all, but pretty high. It's a lot of money.
I'm worth like $100. No, wait.
That's
kind of bad. That's kind of bad for. Hold on. This is not gonna age well. Just like it's fine. You can't buy me. I'm sorry. I'm priceless. That's
good.
What I meant.
Yes, you are. Yes, good. That's the right answer. Whew,
I'm black, by the way.
Holy shit.
I don't know if this is
if you're
audio
listening,
or video.
yeah.
But...
Oh my God. Okay. All right. If someone's listening to audio only, Blizz is
I'm black.
This is black. Oh, good
Which is
Lord.
why he invited me on this show.
That's not why. No, it's not why.
I'm a DEI hire. It's fine.
We got rid of all those practices. Come on. No. I did it out of my own volition. Oh my God. So it's just over $100,000. Barnum balked at this offer and haggled with Lindsay to bring the price down to $1,000, which was closer to $35,000 in modern day cash. Barnum only had $500 to his name, so he rushed home, convinced his wife to hop on board with the endeavor, and sold half the interest in his grocery store to his partner to come up with the additional $500. He returned to Philadelphia, paid Lindsay, and left a slave owner. When Barnum arrived with Joyce Heth in Manhattan, he selected Niblo's Garden as the place to hold his exhibition of Heth.
It sounds fake.
It sounds fake.
I'm gonna be honest.
It does.
Niblo's?
Whenever you're reading about like old American like entertainment venues and stuff, they always have ridiculous names. It's like Nemo's Grove.
Well, that's not ridiculous. Nemo makes sense.
Well, no.
Niblo sounds like it's from another planet. It's like Glizzorp and Nimblo.
It does sound like some kind of alien language. Niblo's Garden. But it was real. It was real. I looked it up, and I think it's like a parking lot now. I remember I looked it up, and it wasn't as impressive as I think it used to be. But apparently, it was an outdoor saloon filled with flowers and trees that would add to the kind of mystical air of a 161-year-old woman. William Niblo was the owner of the garden. Barnum had known him because he applied to be a bartender at the garden in the past, which Niblo did not remember, which worked in Barnum's favor. Niblo did not wish to display Heth of the garden, so he instead leased Barnum a large apartment in the next-door building in exchange for half the gross revenue from ticket sales. Barnum hired a former attorney, Levi Lyman, to serve as his assistant in promoting the show and conducting ceremonies. Lyman was, according to Barnum himself, a shrewd and sociable and somewhat indolent Yankee, which means indolent means lazy, who possessed a good knowledge of human nature, was polite, agreeable, and could converse on most subjects. The two began flooding papers and advertisements and posting provocative flyers around town, and Lyman wrote a seemingly learned pamphlet about Heth using vernacular he had picked up from law school, which added to the publicity. I'll send you a picture of this. I should probably describe this poster. You've got a picture of Joyce Heth, greatly exaggerated in the center of this photo. She looks more like she's made of yarn than she is a human being. It depicts her long fingernails. She's wearing a bonnet. She's wearing an old-style slave apron/dress. And the top of the flyer says, "The greatest natural and national curiosity in the world. Nurse to General George Washington, the father of our country, will be seen at Barnum's Hotel, Bridgeport, on Friday and Saturday, the 11th and 12th days of December, day and evening." And then very big in the middle of this poster, it says, "Age of 161 years. Attendance is 25 cents. Children are half price." So this advertising was immediately successful. Barnum and Lyman charged 25 cents, which was like $9 in today's money, for admission, and then half price for children, encouraging the exhibition to be a family affair. The exhibition was open 3 times a day, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., and 6:30 p.m. to 10 p.m.
I was going to ask, do they have time? Because I was like, what is day and evening? I don't know what that means. Did time exist back then?
Yes, and I don't know why it's not. I guess it is on the poster. It is, but it's not.
On the poster, it's just
big.
The bottom.
Yeah, it's very small on the poster.
I was like, day can mean anything.
Yeah. It's very vague at the top. It's kind of crazy when you think, too. If Heth is apparently 161 years old, she is working from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. interacting with people at the exhibit. There are breaks.
She has an hour lunch break.
Yeah, she gets like two-hour lunch breaks. But hey. I don't know. Like working that long of a day as a Twitch streamer has got me cooked. Look, I can't imagine.
Retail workers would love this. They only get 2 15-minute breaks to go shit, and that's all.
It is a little better, yeah. It just, I would think maybe at 161 you'd be slowing down, but
we are comparing retail working to the treatment of a slave. And this is very wild.
I'm going to say that you're doing that. I'm going to say that you're doing that. I'm not.
Yeah, because like, how will the sanctity of this show continue?
Oh,
if you're
God.
corrupt,
it's already over. It's already over. But these are long hours. But apparently, despite her conditions, Heth was a huge contributor to the exhibition's success. One would assume that she would simply sit there and look old, but she was a natural performer, whether that was through her own volition or not. But according to the guests that went to the show, Barnum and Lyman would open the show with a tale of how Heth's age was discovered, an account of her ownership history in Virginia, and a reading of her bill of sale. Attendees would then ask Heth questions regarding her age and history with the Washington family, and she always stuck to the script to a T. She would sing and chat with members of the audience, gaining lavish praise in local press, and the cult following that she had accrued flowed over even to professionals, with a local physician saying he believed Heth may be, quote, immortal. Do not get a checker from that guy.
No, I trust him. What do you mean? He's immortal.
I read that and I was laughing. So.
What in your medical practices have you to believe that you are able to tell if someone is immortal or not?
This is also like in the city. Like he's like Barnum's not back in Podunk nowhere anymore. This is New York City. He is in the largest city in America at this point.
The city slickers are definitely.
I don't know nothing.
You cannot trust them.
Barnum made about $750 of his $1,000 investment into Heth back by the time business began to dry up, and he paid his split to Niblo. So he attempted to take the exhibit on the road. He presented the exhibition briefly in Providence, Rhode Island, moved to Boston, and then did a much more aggressive marketing blitz exactly like he had done in Manhattan. The public reception was roughly the same. During this exhibition in Boston, he shared a set of ballrooms with Johann Nepomuk Maelzel, a German engineer and inventor who created a larger-than-life size, quote, Turkmen automaton, which would play chess against him and others. He had this automaton play against Napoleon, Catherine the Great, Benjamin Franklin, and Frederick the Great. He was, as a result, immensely famous, serving as the royal mechanician to the German imperial court and an inspiration to Beethoven. His exhibition was held in a large ballroom, while Barnum's Heth exhibition occupied a much smaller ballroom in the building. However, Barnum was running circles around this guy as an advertiser, and he eventually reached an agreement with Maelzel to shutter his quote-unquote terrible Turk exhibit temporarily to give Barnum more space, as Barnum's ballroom had been at capacity since it opened. Maelzel then was interested and took on kind of a mentorship role to Barnum, as he greatly respected his work as a shyster and court holder. Maelzel taught Barnum that quote-unquote that influencer marketing to royalty or upper society, was a key to reaching the next level of success in the culture industry.
And that's when we walk in.
That's when we walk in. Yeah. They're making. God, they're not. I would not go see this exhibit. I would not be seeing this exhibit. I want to make that very clear.
Oh, I would not be.
Maelzel taught Barnum that influencer marketing to royalty and upper society was a key to reaching the next level of success in the culture industry. Because, shocker, Maelzel was also a fraud. He didn't invent this automaton that he had. A Hungarian hydraulic engineer named Baron Wolfgang von Kempelen had done so in 1769, and the Turk had been passed down through sale, eventually coming to Maelzel, who took it on American tour. It was later discovered that Maelzel had been using a series of assistants with physical disabilities and chess acumen to sit inside the Turk and operate it like a mech.
Barnum, I think I've heard of this.
Really? It's a relatively famous exhibit. Yeah. I believe that it's been referenced in pop culture time and time again.
I think it's been referenced in like a show or like in an animation or something. Where
most
at the
likely,
end,
yeah.
You see like someone in the robot, and
yes.
you're like, what?
Yes. Yeah. Because it was a very famous exhibit. You know, Barnum was kind of the one that this guy was, you know, the predecessor to Barnum in many ways, because he showed this exhibit off to the most famous people in the world at the time. So Barnum took inspiration from this hoax. He loved it. He loved that it was a hoax. He loved that it was fake, because it gave him another tool in his toolbox to continue doing his own hoaxes. He decided that when crowds began to thin for his Heth exhibit, he was going to claim that she too was an automaton. He was using this guy's failure, right? This guy's exposure as a fraud to his own benefit. So Barnum put out an ad. Okay, so he put out this ad, but he disguised it as a letter to the Boston press. It was titled A Visitor, and it said in part, quote, "Joyce Heth is not a human being. What purports to be a remarkably old woman is simply a curiously constructed automaton made up of whalebone, India rubber, and numberless springs ingeniously put together and made to move with the slightest touch according to the will of the operator. The exhibitor is a ventriloquist, and all the conversations apparently held with the ancient lady are purely imaginary, so far as she's concerned." The ad was a hit. Business boomed, and Barnum, off this lie, began a tour of the entirety of New England with Heth in tow. During a stop at the museum in Albany, New York, Barnum participated in another shared exhibit space with several other presenters. In this shared event, he met an Italian man named Signor Antonio, who performed a series of balancing acts, plate spinning, walking on stilts, and balancing bayoneted rifles on his nose. Barnum signed him to a 1-year performer contract, guaranteeing him $12 a week. I looked it up as like $430 in today's money.
That's not bad, maybe? That is bad. That's bad.
Yeah, you're looking at like, I don't know how much he was working, but I mean, $430 a week is, that's like what, $1,200 a month, $1,300 a month. So not great, not the worst, but Barnum cleaned up this Italian man, forcing him to take a bath for the first time in a year, and renamed him to Signor Vivala. I looked up why he renamed him. I don't know why. It doesn't really make any sense. He wasn't trying to hide that he was Italian. He wasn't trying to, I don't know, maybe that was what, maybe Italian. Wait. There was like Italian, negative Italian sentiment in this era. So maybe that's why? I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe he was trying to hide the Italian.
Yeah, I don't know.
Why do people hate the Italian?
I don't know. I think they were just kind of like the brown people of the 1800s. You know what I mean? Like they were the brown people to hate of that century.
and not the slaves that they.
No, because they didn't see them as human. It's fucking crazy. It's crazy. These guys were just the humans they hated, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if that's a reason why, but that's what I theorize.
You heard it here first, people. Crub saying that Italians are the Browns of history, because we don't know that to be true, but you did just say that. I will tell my boyfriend that you just said that.
Oh God, Italians exist. Do not
My
forget them.
Italian boyfriend.
Do not erase Italians. Oh my God. After 2 weeks of performances, serving as Vivala's assistant on stage, Barnum saw great success with the act. He delegated Joyce Heth exhibitions to his assistant Levi Lyman and went on the road with Vivala, as Heth's popularity was beginning to wane because he had showed her off for so long and had already done multiple shticks with her. After a disappointing night in Washington, D.C., he began searching for yet another act, but he didn't find anything. He failed to find anything for a little while, and he continued on with the Vivala act to middling results. So it's interesting. Barnum is also, he's credited as being the creator of the culture industry. He's also one of the earliest corporate entities in America, which you notice when he brought on Senior Vivala and delegated Heth to his assistant Lyman, right? He's already creating like a corporate structure of individual departments managing different acts. And it becomes even more apparent later in his story, where he's kind of acting as this CEO of this company. Even early on, right now, when he's barely paying his own bills, he's already kind of developing this mindset.
Well, he's like a talent manager, probably.
Yeah, kind of, short of. Yeah, he is. But he has his own talent management company.
Yeah, he's not sticking to one thing. He's not like a League of Legends gamer. He's like,
he's a variety streamer.
Doing other thing. He's a variety streamer.
Yeah,
Sometimes he just chats.
Yeah, that's. So once again, the popularity for both Heth and Vivala was beginning to wane, and Barnum still had outstanding debts to pay. So during a performance in Philadelphia with Signor Vivala, he was heckled by an audience member who claimed he could do anything the Italian could do, and possibly even do it better. This included his plate spinning and his still walking. Barnum was able to rein in the heckling during the show by talking to the heckler and asking him to quiet down. His name...
No, I would have been like, show me. Get up here. It is now your turn. Show me that you can do it better than him. What?
You and Barnum aren't so different.
I kind of wish you were.
Barnum talked to the man during the show and was able to get him to quiet down, but decided that he wanted to meet up with him after the show because this heckling had been great entertainment during the performance. The next day, Barnum found out the man's name was Roberts and that he was a circus juggler, and decided that he was going to get Roberts to come back to his show of his own volition. The next day, Barnum put ads in as many Philly daily newspapers as he could, offering $1,000 to anyone who could publicly replicate every single one of Vivala's acts. He knew that Roberts was going to show up, and show up Roberts did. When Barnum pressed him to perform all of these acts, it became clear he could actually perform many of Vivala's tricks. He was actually pretty talented. He was a pretty good performer. And he could even do some tricks that Vivala could not do. He had some of his own unique talents. There were two things that Roberts couldn't do, which was stilt walking and balancing plates. So the deal was off. Roberts got incensed by this, but Barnum had already planned for this reaction. He knew it was coming. He was about to make a deal with Roberts. He wanted Roberts to pretend he was challenging Vivala to a juggling duel at the next show. The challenge wouldn't be real. The entire event would be choreographed and managed by Barnum, but nobody else would know. Roberts agreed to put on this public act. On the night of the bout, after Roberts had publicly challenged Vivala, Barnum sold $593 in tickets. On the nights Robert had originally heckled Vivala, he had made $75. So creating this public beef, this once again, you see this in so many industries. Like this is like boxing promotion.
Yeah.
Is essentially what he's doing here. He goes from $75 in sales for tickets to $593. He almost 10x's his money by doing this like publicity stunt. Barnum had also carefully crafted the run of show. Vivala was going to start by performing his easiest acts. That way the show would go on for as long as possible and tension would build. This kept up until Roberts failed to spin the plates after a 40-minute back and forth where each contestant kept up performing acts successfully. Roberts conceded gracefully to raucous applause. But it wasn't over. Barnum was already ready to set up a sequel. After both competitors left the stage that night, Barnum emerged from the curtain to announce that Roberts was suffering from a sprained wrist during the show, and the true show was happening a week from now. Same plays, same prices. Vivala won the second round as well, but Barnum continued this quote-unquote feud show on the road for a month more, doing the same thing over and over, having Roberts challenge Vivala. They'd go back and forth. And then he would say one of them was suffering from an ailment, and that's why they lost. And he did this over and over and over and over again. By the time the feud was touring, Joyce Heth had fallen ill and was retired to live with Barnum's half-brother in Bethel, Connecticut. Barnum seemingly had an appreciative attitude towards Heth on her deathbed and sent money to support her and hired another black woman to be her caretaker. Heth died under this arrangement on February 21st, 1836. Barnum was preparing her burial. Oh, God, this is like, oh my God. The way I said seemingly in the last paragraph is you'll see why it seemed that he was appreciative and respectful of her death. That changes very quickly here.
You're setting me up to be disappointed in a man that I'm already disappointed for. So this is great.
It mostly just gets worse, you know? It really is crazy how bad it gets.
It's his grandfather's fault. It's his grandfather's fault. But also he should take accountability, obviously. But like, he grew up in a kind of dickish household, it seems.
He did. And he had this great relationship with his grandfather, but his grandfather instilled in him that it was normal, you know? It was normal and it was a skill to be an asshole.
Hey, chat, it's normal to be this. I don't know why I said chat. Chat, it's normal to be an asshole. Normalize being an asshole.
Normalize being a dick. Normalize being. We need more of this. We need more negative energy in this world.
I think we're contributing to the youth becoming alpha males.
Yeah, is this a Manosphere podcast? Are we accidentally doing a Manosphere podcast? We might be owned. No. I don't know. Oh man. After Joyce Heth dies, Barnum was preparing her burial when he remembered that he had promised a famous surgeon, Dr. David L. Rogers, a chance to do a post-mortem exam of her body. He obliged. Barnum and Lyman met with the surgeon and a large crowd of members of the medical community at a medical hall in New York, and the autopsy began. So he does this public exhibition of this autopsy of this body of this woman that he's exploited his entire life. Like it just gets worse and worse and worse. He truly milks her for all she's worth. It is horrific. It's awful. I guess the one quote unquote positive of this public exhibition is upon completion of the dissection, Dr. Rogers began to question Barnum. Joyce's body showed the signs of someone who was no more than 80 years old, not 161 as he had claimed. Barnum went back and forth with the doctor, maintaining that this could not be true, and if it was, surely he had just been simply duped by the man who had sold her to him. But the next day, Richard Adams Locke, who had attended the postmortem exam, published an article in the New York Sun titled Dissection of Joyce Heth, Previous Humbug Exposed. Humbug, I was confused by this word when it was put in there. Humbug basically just means hoax. It just means like a hoax going on.
Isn't that what they used in not the Christmas Story? Who's the Christmas thing?
No, you're right. I think it is.
Humbug?
Yes, it is. Scrooge uses this. It kind of means bullshit, right? Like it's kind of like a puritanical way to say bullshit.
I know my SAT words. Crub. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Hey, I'm just saying for the audience. You know, I know you knew, of course. I just wanted to make sure we had clarity there.
Let us know in the comment section. I don't know where you're posting this. Let us know in the comment section if you knew what humbug was.
That's true. Hey, good retention grab. That's good. This article at first generated a lot of malice towards Barnum. People were mad that they had been tricked. He continued to maintain his ignorance of the truth, but soon criticism softened. People just forgot about it. Also, on top of people just forgetting about it, nobody had it like Barnum when it came to showmanship. People were desperate for his ability to entertain because it just wasn't common to have people who could hold a court like he did. As the heat from the expose on the Heth hoax cooled, so did Barnum's profits from Vivala and Roberts. He was desperate to stay in showbiz, so he sought out an expert named Aaron Turner. Turner was a former English shoemaker who transitioned to the entertainment business by starting America's first full-top canvas circus. He made a small fortune off the acrobats and trained horses under his tent, and Barnum wished to work under him. Barnum was going to trade Vivala's act and his own bookkeeping and ticket selling services to Turner's Circus for $80 a month. Barnum sent his wife and daughter back to Bethel and joined the Turner Circus on the road with its wagons and horses and raucous team of around 36 men. Barnum absorbed a lot in the art of showmanship from Turner, who in ways reminded him of his grandfather. A lover of practical jokes, Turner almost got Barnum killed one night when he was at a hotel bar. Barnum walked out after enjoying refreshments with Turner wearing a very churchy Sunday best outfit. And while Turner remained in the bar, he turned to patrons and exclaimed that he was shocked to see Barnum there. He explained to the patrons that Barnum was the Reverend E.K. Avery, a notorious criminal who had murdered a woman named Sarah Cornell, a factory worker in Rhode Island. Avery had gone on trial at the Supreme Court for murder, but was acquitted by hiring a crack team of 6 separate attorneys. He was, quote-unquote, innocent, but public sentiment against him was certain of his guilt, and he was despised by everyone around. Last he had been seen, he was rumored to be working as a farmer in Ohio. So, thinking that Barnum was this man, the patrons of the bar stormed out after him, nearly 100 people,
Oh my God.
and they were prepared to lynch him. They were planning on hanging him in the public square.
Okay, hot take. They should have.
I'm not gonna lie. Okay,
They kind of should have.
Barnum kind of deserved it, but also like kind of respect to the look. I can see this backfiring, but if it actually was that guy, the Reverend guy, like I'm not gonna fault
the community getting together.
Yeah,
Very
like
quickly.
shout
That's what you were
out
gonna
to the
say.
local organizing. I'm kind of like I kind of respect it. If they were right, that would have been awesome.
And if they were wrong, that would have been
And
awesome.
if they were wrong, it actually probably would have been good here. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. After they grabbed him, Barnum frantically explained that Turner had played a joke on them. He was babbling, he was begging for his life, and they dragged him back to the bar to see if the explanation was true, if Barnum was telling the truth and he wasn't actually the Reverend. Turner explained that he had got him, and most of the angry mob found it amusing, letting Barnum go. That I don't understand at all. I would have been pissed.
No, because at that point, Turner, I would have killed you.
God.
Then they can come after me for killing someone.
When I read this, I was like, I am shocked that like the average angry working class dude at the bar was not going to like beat the shit out of this guy who just told him that, who just tricked him, right? I was shocked by this. But I guess
it's because red dye number 40 doesn't exist. So.
That's true. They were all
Yeah.
they were all more docile because of that.
Yeah.
So they finally let Barnum go, and Barnum turns to Turner and asks him why he just almost allowed him to be killed. Turner explained to Barnum, quote, "My dear Barnum, it was all for our good. Remember, all we need to ensure success is notoriety. You will see this noised about all around town, and our pavilion will be crammed the following night." Surely enough, the pavilion was crammed the next night, and Barnum never forgot this lesson. Very much all press is good press, I guess.
It is, and they're so right.
It is kind of true. Unfortunately, we see this a lot in our industry. So Barnum finishes this training with Turner, amicably parts ways with Roberts, who is his juggling man, who is part of the feud act, as a reminder, during a stop in North Carolina. He then does a few solo shows with Vivala, the Italian plate spinner, and a black man he had hired named James Sanford. I believe Sanford was actually hired help. I don't believe that he was a slave who was technically owned by Barnum. Not that that's any better, but you know.
He probably was a slave. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. He probably was a slave. You're probably right. They are in the South at this point, or close to it. So
probably a slave, and also Barnum's not very good. Not a
you're
good
probably
guy,
right.
So.
Yeah, you're probably right. One night, Sanford quit right before a show he was promised to be at, and Barnum performed one of his more morally dubious acts. Barnum, in place of Sanford, put on blackface and began performing a minstrel show in place of Sanford.
I think I've seen this or heard of this.
Oh God. Yep. Pretty from what I've read so far, it's not what he was necessarily known for, but he was willing to do it if the need arose, I guess.
Who needs to put on blackface? The need for blackface is actually a wild concept.
I was gonna do this, but
you didn't. You didn't put it in quotations. The need for blackface. Please.
I needed the quotations. I should have done. I did. There is no need for blackface. I'm going to come out and say it. Controversial take. There's no need. He shouldn't have done it.
Pull out the ukulele.
I think that Barnum's canceled. I think, I would cancel him if he existed in the modern era. Oh my God.
Hey, that's why, look, I would have done blackface as I'm black, by the way.
I think you're doing it right now.
I'm actually white under all this. I take a sponge and I just like wipe off. Oops. I've been a social experiment this entire time. And I'm not even bisexual.
Holy shit, dude.
I can't wait for you to cut all this out because it will incriminate me.
It's all staying in. It's all staying in. It's just the dead spaces are getting cut. Oh my God. So after this, Barnum finally returns home because Vivala leaves him to retire in Cuba. I don't know why he chose Cuba. He's Italian. I don't know what his thought. I also don't really know how he retired. I don't know where he got the money.
Get away with things in Cuba, I think, before a certain time. Like, people would just run away to Cuba. I could be lying, but I swear this is the tea. You could get away with stuff. It was like leaving the country in a sense.
I mean, I guess that is true. Yeah, yeah. Vivala, I mean, to my knowledge, from what I've seen, he's not doing anything illegal necessarily. He's just he's associated with Barnum, so I guess that is dangerous.
I feel like blackface is illegal, and
that's not in this time. It's not. It's
you heard it here first. Crub said blackface is not illegal.
It's not. I don't even think it's illegal now. It's not very cool, but I don't think it's illegal.
I genuinely don't know.
I don't believe there are any. I mean,
I'll Google this later.
I'm not an expert on the law, but.
Crub's an expert on the law. If you're gonna text me at 3 a.m. about blackface, just know I was thinking about this and I did do my research.
I can look after. Oh my God.
Your FBI agent will be concerned.
Yeah, David, why is there a sudden uptick in blackface searches from you, man? What's going on? Are you okay? Good Lord. After Vivala went and took his leave to Cuba, on June 4th, 1838, Barnum returned to his family in New York. He was wealthier at this point, but for him, not enough. He was, quote, disgusted with the life of the itinerant showman and longed for a, quote, more respectable permanent business. Barnum attempted to settle down by advertising in the newspaper that he had $2,500 to invest in a more sane enterprise than showbiz. He received many inquiries, many scammers like himself, which he quickly identified because it takes one to know one. But one of these scammers stuck out. A German man named Proller came to him with a good reputation and asked Barnum to join him in the manufacturing and sale of cologne, bootblacking, and waterproof paste. Barnum was on board and their firm prospered for a few months, selling products as far away as Cleveland. However, one morning, Barnum awoke in a frenzy after discovering that Proller had got up and left during the night, taking the entire firm's assets with him in a one-way trip to Rotterdam. Barnum had no way of catching him, and in an act of desperation, returned to what he knows best. Showbiz. Except his next couple of endeavors, he fails miserably. He doesn't have any success. He tries to get back into it, and it is just flop after flop after flop. He has performers deserting on him. He has box office flops. And he's approaching 31 years old and is almost penniless entirely. He's working as an advertising copywriter for a marketing material for a local amphitheater, and he's making $4 a week. After toiling away and picking up clerk work at the theater, one day it finally happens. Barnum learned that a collection of curiosities was being sold by Scooter's American Museum. So he's got no money, but he has a little bit of a lead now. Now, as I said earlier, because circuses and theaters were considered taboo, at least a little bit. They existed, but they were still considered taboo by the general public. It was a place that a lot of mostly young men without families would hang out at, right? They would drink, they would gamble. It was a degenerate place to be. They weren't considered centers of art or family entertainment.
Did whorehouses exist at this time? Sorry, that's a very wild question for you to ask.
I'm pretty sure. You ever play Red Dead Redemption? You got there are plenty of like brothels and shit in that.
Were the men not hanging out at brothels?
I mean, probably, yeah. But like, sometimes you want to kick it with the boy. You don't need no woman around to get in your business. You need to kick it with the boys and watch some circus clowns.
That's literally okay. You don't want to know what I'm about to say. I've had those experiences with the boys, I guess. I don't know, man.
I mean, they probably
sounds gay.
They're probably doing. I mean, they might be gay. Maybe that's where the gay degenerates hang out. I don't know. Look,
hang out at the circus. When was the last time you've been to the circus?
God, I went when I was. Oh my God, like a proper circus. I haven't been to a circus since I was like 6. I haven't even heard about a circus since I was like 6. It just scared me too. I remember there was a clown. He put his head in an oven. He exploded and it scared the crap out of me.
Did you witness a murder?
He looked dead. That's why it scared me so bad. It was a really loud noise, and then he comes out and he's like charred to a crisp, and I was like, it scared me. I didn't like it. I had to be removed from the theater. My grandparents took me home. It was awesome.
It was okay.
Not a big clown guy. I'm not scared of clowns, but I'm not a big fan either.
Wait, after this, I'm gonna look up I'm gonna look up a circus, and we need to go to the circus. You're gonna fly to Austin.
I will absolutely go to a circus. I haven't been to a circus in forever. Patreon members. I have no idea if there's a Patreon. Hey, you want to see some circus footage from Blizz and I? Hey, check it out on the Patreon or the Quibbly link or the Shibly link or whatever the fuck I end up monetizing this with. But yeah, so circuses in theaters are considered, they're considered taboo, but museums such as Scooters, who had this collection that Barnum was looking into, were kind of a loophole for providing entertainment under the guise of education and preservation. Scooter had acquired his museum from the 1790 founded Tammany Museum, which existed in the west wing of a government building that had the appearance of a Quaker church. He bought it in 1810, added to the collection by purchasing oddities from around the world from visiting sea captains, and moved his exhibition to City Hall. In 1830, he moved again to a 5-story building, newly built where an old amusement park used to stand. This is where he opened the American Museum properly. His museum included the following, and I quote, stuffed birds, reptiles, waxworks of villains and great men, a living collection of animals and freaks, from a dog named Apollo who played cards and dominoes to a 26-year-old little person named Caroline Clark who is 36 inches tall. Then that's it. Yeah. That's it.
And Zendaya.
And Zendaya's there too. I thought there was more to that. I do. When Scooter died, his daughters had little success over a 3-year period maintaining the museum as a profitable venture. They looked to sell, and Barnum was interested as a regular attendee of the museum. He loved going to this museum. It was he saw past these thinly guised veneer of it being an educational facility that it was more just a spectacle. Barnum was broke, though. He was making no money, but he decided to take a long shot. He was going to go talk to the owner of the museum building, Francis W. Olmsted, not the owner of the museum, but the one who was renting it to Scooter's family. And he was going to talk to him about leasing the collection and building from him. He wrote Olmsted a letter asking him to buy the collection from Scooter's daughters and to lease him the space to exhibit it and pay him back on credit for the pieces themselves. He offered to only keep $12.50 a week, with the rest going directly to Olmsted until his debt was repaid. He sent this letter off, and he anxiously awaited 2 days until he received a reply from Olmsted that he would like to meet him in person. When Barnum went to go meet Olmsted, he was interested but skeptical, and he asked if Barnum could get any references to vouch for him. Barnum had a pretty good reputation around the city, at least from the elites, right? From his fellow quote-unquote businessman, Barnum had a pretty good rep. He had damaged his reputation with the public at times because of his hoaxes and because of the way he conducted his business, but most high-standing men in this era that he had met respected him. So a couple of these men went and actually talked to Olmsted in person. The morning after these references visit, Barnum returned to Olmsted. Olmsted said to Barnum that day, quote, "I don't like your references." This made Barnum extremely apologetic and downtrodden, only for Olmsted to follow up with, quote, "They speak too highly of you. In fact, they talk as if they were all partners of yours and intended to share profits in this venture." Barnum and Olmsted then reached a deal with the daughters to purchase the collection for $12,000, and Barnum would pay Olmsted $3,000 a year to lease his building on a 10-year contract. However, Olmsted had only one reservation. He wanted collateral. He knew that Barnum was broke. and Barnum owned literally nothing that he could put up as collateral. What do you think he did, Blizz? This is a deep reference, but it has been something that we talked about in this story that maybe seemed irrelevant earlier comes up again here.
He either sells a person or...
Wait, what? Wild for me to say after you said may seem irrelevant, because like, why would you say that's irrelevant, Crub? That's wild. Yeah, I can turn the tables.
Or I think he scams someone else out of something and tries to resell it to this man. So like the bottle situation.
Ooh, okay, that's good. I like
turning
that
into a
guess.
fortune.
Do you remember the fact that Barnum owns some land?
Oh my God, Ivy Island or whatever.
That's crazy that you remember the name. Yes, Ivy Island. Barnum tells Olmsted that he owns 5 acres of land in Connecticut, which were gifted to him by his grandfather. When Olmsted asked if his grandfather was wealthy, Barnum claimed he was, quote, well off for those parts. Olmsted was satisfied with his answer.
You know what that sounds like? Well off for those parts? That his grandfather had a big dick.
That's so weird for him to say. Like, well, he's well off and like
well
those
endowed.
parts.
He's well endowed there.
He's well endowed.
Down there, down in those parts. Oh my gosh. Olmsted was happy with this. Barnum had successfully duped him and put up Ivy Island, the useless plot of land, as collateral. However, on the day Barnum appeared to sign papers to take possession of the museum, he was met by the administrator of Scooter's estate. The administrator informed him they sold the museum instead to a higher bidder, the Peel family, who were owners of another museum, the Peel Museum, which was a competitor to Scooter's museum. So Barnum was pissed, and in his off time, he remained obsessed with the idea of his museum. He had to go back to his mundane job, and all he could think about while he was doing this copywriting job for this little theater was the idea of that owning that museum. He was so obsessed that he began to do some digging on the family that undercut him. He found out that no members of the Peel family were actually still involved in the organization. It was just a namesake for the museum. They had already sold their assets, and the people who had bought those assets were a seedy investment firm headed by a bunch of ex-disgraced bankers. The bankers had a plan to purchase the American Museum using the reputable Peel name and sell the general public $50,000 of stock in this venture. They were going to reserve $30,000 for themselves and then pull the rug. Again, an insane parallel to the modern era. This is literally just a crypto pump and dump. They are doing a crypto pump and dump with a piece of actual physical property.
Which is a great transition into Crub is actually announcing Crub Coin.
There is no Crub Coin?
Cryptocurrency that you can actually purchase today.
Nope.
And you know, we kind of have a sale going on with this too.
Nope.
So
Nope. Not on the. Nope. No. I mean, if President Trump can do it, why can't I do it? I feel like, you know, if he can do it as the highest man in the land, why can't I do it?
It's super weird because you also are a firm believer of taking away rights for marginalized people too. Like,
don't
that's like
never
the
say.
whole thing. And I was like, cool, man. Don't know why you told me that. But
No,
like,
we
thanks.
don't. Me and Mr. Trump don't share any other similarities. Just the fact that we both have a rug pull planned. But they planned to pull the rug underneath the investors and then flee and leave the museum to rot and become the public's burden. The public would own this museum technically, but no one would care about it, and it would just rot from the inside out. Barnum was again able to use his reputation to his advantage when he found out this information. He called every press connection he possibly could and wrote an expose that he blasted through the city. The Peel directors still issued their stock despite these stories going pretty viral around the city, but almost no one bought a single penny of it. Barnum's blitz was successful. Barnum then met with the administrator of this estate again and found out that the payment was due on the 26th of November from these ex-bankers. They had to pay by the 26th of December. He then made a deal with the representative that if the directors failed to make their payment on that day, he would be able to purchase the estate for the original deal of $12,000 the following day. These ex-bankers that were directors of the Peel estate knew they had a fellow pirate in Barnum, and they invited him to a meeting to discuss how they could amicably settle this quarrel. They offered Barnum $3,000 a month to manage both museums if he would shut the fuck up in the papers about their illicit plans. They still wanted to do the rug pull, and they would pay Barnum to keep his mouth shut. Barnum happily agreed to this, And they knew they had him. They probably weren't planning on actually paying him, honestly, is what they thought. They thought they would be able to pull the wool over his eyes, promise him a salary, and do the exact same thing they planned on doing with the rest of the public. But Barnum was a step ahead. With their buying competition gone, they relaxed their pursuit of the museum and waited for more stock to sell, right? Because no one was buying the stock, so they had to wait longer for the story to cool down in order to actually get the general public to be interested in buying this venture again, because everybody was skeptical that it was a scam. In this moment of respite, they missed their payment due date. They went past the 26th of December, the day that they were told to finish the purchase. Barnum knew this was going to happen, and on December 27th, he bought the museum. 5 days later, on the morning of New Year's Day, 1842, P.T. Barnum's American Museum opened to the public. And I have a little bit of an excerpt from the book that I used to read here. On his opening day, Barnum had to be satisfied with showing $50,000 worth of exhibits that he had inherited from Scooter. There were cracked and molding panoramas and dioramas of, quote, a fairy grotto and, quote, the creation. There were dusty miniature models of Dublin, Paris, and Jerusalem. There was a glass-blowing exhibition, an automaton bird that flapped its wings, a robot, a curious mechanical knitting machine run by a dog. There were rows of stuffed animals contrasting with cages of living creatures that included an anaconda, an orangutan, and an alligator. There was the gory arm of a pirate named Tom Trouble. There was a waxwork depicting the pitfalls of intemperance, and the art gallery had paintings of famous Americans. It was interesting, but it was tame and static, and it had been there too long. Almost overnight, the Barnum touch became evident. The eager showman sought greater oddity, more action, and fun, more variety. Quote, the transient attractions of the museum were constantly diversified, Barnum said. And educated dogs, industrious fleas, automatons, jugglers, ventriloquists, living statuary, tableau, fortune tellers, albinos, fat boys, giants, dwarfs, rope dancers, live Yankees, singing and dancing with great variety. The first Punch and Judy show in America was also displayed in this museum.
What's a Punch and Judy?
Punch and Judy show is a British puppet show where the entire point of it is a dude beats the shit out of his wife.
That's like it's not MASH TV. It's like that Why I Oughta guy.
That is the entire bit of a Punch and Judy show.
There's like a fascination amongst people just hating their wives.
Yes. I mean, it's peak humor. It is and was considered peak humor for
the old ball and chain
of American history. It's and British history, I should say. It's nuts.
Yeah. It's like I don't know what's up with the previous generations' like hatred towards the people that they marry. It's like you married this person.
It is baffling to me as well. It's not something that I understand. But it was selling gangbusters back then, man. So Barnum continues this trend of live action entertainment, right? He really livened up the museum by keeping these old, exhibits that people could go and look at, but he also put on live shows, right? So he starts exhibiting, quote, freaks of nature, right? Very fat people, people that are incredibly tall, people that are incredibly short, people that can do acrobatics acts, people with, we think of the classics, right? The bearded lady, all these things that were considered quote unquote freakish in this era. God, every time I'm like, it's bad, but it's not as bad as earlier. It's still bad. He would go out and grab like remote, unassimilated tribes of Native Americans, and he would offer them boarding at his museum. And they would come out into the museum foyer and perform traditional rituals for customers. and that was one of his biggest sells was these
oh my God,
unassimilated tribes. Yeah. Yep. Really.
Not my cousins. What the
really
hell?
Just oh my God. Any
brother.
It is brutal. On a more, in like a little bit more of a benign note, he would also host beauty pageants for dogs, birds, cats, and babies.
Well, that's also, I hate beauty pageants.
Beauty pageants are kind of lame. Yeah, they're not good. But I think I'd have that over like Native
I'd rather have
quote, freak
beauty
shows.
Pageants over using my cousins as a fucking.
Yep, not great.
So
he also wasn't paying them. He was just offering them board, right? He was just offering them like.
I assumed it was exposure.
Yep, they were working for exposure. That is true. Good Lord. So Barnum was really frugal during this first year of the museum's opening. He had a big debt to pay, and he was aware of that. One day, Olmsted caught him eating some corned beef and bread at his desk around dinner time and asked if this is how he always ate dinner. Barnum told him he had, quote, not eaten a warm meat dinner since he bought the museum, except on the Sabbath, and that he intended to never eat warm food on a weekday until his debt was paid. Olmsted had seen this success and assured him he'd have the debt paid off in a year. It took Barnum 18 months to pay off his debt. And much of this success in paying off the debt was in part to a room in the museum where Scooter used to have a scientist or professor on hand who would give lectures on some attractions to the museum. Barnum thought this was boring, though, and had made it much more appealing. In fact, he wanted this room to be a theater. But the issue, as we talked about earlier, Blizz, was theater was highly regarded as a tool of the devil. And
Makes sense.
that was a self-fulfilling prophecy in many ways, because theaters around New York didn't exist in areas where families hung out, right? They were often crime-ridden. They were in areas where a lot of people were not taking their kids for a Sunday brunch.
I mean, you've met a theater kid, right?
I've met a theater kid. They're evil, right? Like this has not changed in the modern era, despite.
Yeah, they're doing ketamine behind the curtains. they're just kissing each other.
Raucous drug den trap houses, these theaters.
Yeah.
But so this is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and the theaters around in New York were run down and crime-ridden. Barnum saw an opportunity in this. He was going to fix the industry. So he takes this lecture hall and he turns it into a theater. And he made it a big point to invite women and children to attend the shows that he put on. He didn't sell any alcohol on the premises, and if someone left to get a drink between acts and was caught, he would not allow them to re-enter the museum. He advertised the shows as produced for, quote, those who disapprove of the dissipations, debauchery, profanity, vulgarity, and other abominations. He started retelling Bible stories on stage, historical novels such as Uncle Tom's Cabin, and Shakespearean plays censored of their, quote, objectionable features. Because of this, Barnum had filled a void that a lot of families wanted to fill in their lives of amusement. His theater drew actors who would go on to be extremely famous, and eventually the theater drew crowds of 3,000 people a day. This was due to the rampant advertising they were doing. I mean, they were just doing they were blitzing the ads. So much of the income of this museum was going directly back into advertising, and Barnum had an innate understanding of the psychology of advertising. He's been called the Shakespeare of advertising, and even is coined with inventing a rule of thumb that I learned in marketing school. I remember learning this in marketing school, where a customer, it's a rule that a customer won't usually commit to purchasing anything until they've seen an ad for it 7 times.
Wait, is that a T? Like, is that?
I don't know. I learned this in marketing school, so I'm assuming that it's based around psychology and data. But like, I remember learning this out of a book that yes, it's 7 times before the customer will see it. They'll they won't even think about it. They'll see it again. They won't think about it again. The 3rd time they'll be like, oh, I kind of recognize that. The 4th time they'll be like, huh, maybe that fills a need in my life. 5th time they're like, okay, that's one of my options. 6th time they're like, okay, this is one of my final options. Maybe I'm going to buy this. 7th time they're like, okay, I do need this. I've seen it enough times. It's being presented to me enough that I must need it.
Wait, Instagram does that with me and underwear. Like I know that sounds so random, but like gay people love underwear because you want to find like the nicest underwear.
Gay people love.
I'm not wrong. I can promise you this. Gay people love underwear. And so like I talk about underwear sometimes where I'm like, I just really want to have a nice pair of underwear that's breathable and stuff. And like I'll get ads for them. And I will like probably see something for like the 7th time and be like, you know what? Fuck it. Maybe I do buy this and try it out.
Yeah.
And then I hate it.
Yeah. Right. Sometimes it's not even something you need or want. Right.
No.
But Barnum was so good at holding court, and he had such a monopoly on this style of entertainment built for this demographic that he was able to keep his customers for the most part. Barnum is running this thriving theater. He's able to pay back his debt in 18 months, and he was getting really good at advertising. And it wasn't just paper ads that he was good at. He advertised in any way he possibly could figure out. He decked out the museum with colorful paintings, and this is one of my favorite. This is like my favorite bit that he does. This is like an actually funny bit. So he decks out the museum with colorful paintings, right? Because it was very drab looking before, right? So the museum looks. You can see inside the museum. You can see these colorful paintings. It draws the eye. And then in in another way, that's kind of his positive marketing. His negative marketing is he hires this really, really bad orchestral band to play across the street so that people will be driven into the museum to escape the noise.
Oh, wait, he might be on to something.
Just puts a bunch of dudes that could just dog shit musicians, the white rappers of the 1830s,
Yeah,
and has them perform on the other side of the street. He's quoted as saying, "I took pains to select and maintain the poorest band I could find." He also refused to pay them.
No, because Crub, if you think about it, this is literally when you stream, people run to my stream to escape you.
Fuck you.
Because they need to get away. So a
repellent. Oh my God.
Like,
Yes.
Crub's live, I have to go to Blizz. It's good marketing for me. So I completely understand where he's going from.
Because I am so repellent.
And
oh
I don't
my
pay
God.
you. So this is
That is true. You don't pay me. But yeah, he refuses to pay them, and he actually starts. Eventually, he realized he doesn't have to pay them, and people want to play for him because, I'm not even kidding, he tells them that they're playing for exposure, and this exposure is worth it. And it also gives them an opportunity to practice their instruments. So he decides not only is he not going to pay them, he's going to make them pay him.
Oh.
And they do. They pay him to play across the street from the museum, get exposure, practice their instruments, and be associated with the museum.
This man is eating and money.
There are some hilarious things that he does. Like he is a bad person and he does some absolutely aberrant things. But sometimes you can't help but shake your head and be like, classic.
Yeah.
One day as Barnum is operating the museum, another museum proprietor brought him a curiosity. The Fiji mermaid. Apparently, there is this mermaid corpse, and this corpse is brought to him. It's called the Fiji mermaid. It was acquired in Calcutta by a Bostonian sailor who was assured by a team of Japanese sailors who sold it to him that it was real. In awe, he pays these Japanese sailors $6,000, and it goes back to London to exhibit this mermaid corpse. There was moderate success, but it was short-lived. He wasn't much of a showman. A report from the Reverend Dr. Phillip in Gentleman's Magazine in July of 1822 described the exhibit of the mermaid as such. The head is almost the size of a baboon. It is thinly covered with black hair, hanging down and not inclined to frizzle. The head is turned back, and the countenance has an expression of terror, which gives it the appearance of a caricature of a human face. The ears, nose, lip, chin, breasts, nipples, fingers, and nails resemble those of a human figure. The appearance of the teeth affords sufficient evidence that it is full grown. The length of the animal is 3 feet. When this sailor dies, who was putting on this exhibit, his son sells it to this museum proprietor who was visiting Barnum today. Barnum, it seems from all reports I see, from even the stuff that he wrote himself, it seems from most reports that he actually genuinely believed the Joyce Heth story. I don't know if he did, but he did a really good job of hiding it if he didn't believe it, because every single time he seems to fully believe in these hoaxes that he has presented.
Yeah, who would lie to him? He's P.T. Barnum.
He's P.T. Barnum. Why would he be? Yeah, right, exactly. Why would someone lie to him? So it definitely seems that he wanted to clear his name from this incident. So he actually brings in a naturalist this time. I don't know what the hell a naturalist is. I think I don't know person who understands the natural world. I guess like a biologist. Yeah. So he actually brings in a naturalist ahead of time to examine the Fiji mermaid and tell him if it was legit before he displays it. So he's actually doing a little bit of digging here, which is admirable, I guess. But then then after, I did a bunch of reading and then I got to this line and I was like, oh no, never mind. He knew that was bullshit the whole time. The naturalist said he believed it was manufactured because he, quote, didn't believe in mermaids.
Oh.
So he's probably right, but his reasoning wasn't great to Barnum. Regardless, Barnum didn't give a shit. He didn't give a fuck. There was far too much potential here. He figured that the public would probably be skeptical in the same way the naturalist was, so he devised a plan to advertise this Fiji mermaid exhibition. And with this, a new character enters the P.T. Barnum universe.
Zendaya!
It's Zendaya! Yes, who plays a doctor by the name of Dr. J. Griffin. And it is played by Zendaya. You're right. If you've watched The Greatest Showman, you know this. So this doctor is apparently now associated with Barnum, and suddenly 3 separate newsletters appeared in New York publications from Alabama, South Carolina, and Washington, D.C., which discussed an eccentric doctor who had in his possession the remarkable mermaid and had permitted them to look at it. And his next stop was in New York City before he was back off to England. In these newspapers, people are seeing the first reports of this Fiji mermaid. And apparently it's in the possession of a doctor who's traveling around. Reporters soon got a beat that Dr. Griffin had checked into the Pacific Hotel in New York, and they swarmed the lobby. Griffin greets them, except, unbeknownst to these reporters, Griffin was not a doctor. He was Levi Lyman, Barnum's titular assistant. None of the reporters recognized him, and Lyman, sure enough, had the Fiji mermaid in his hotel room, which he allowed all the reporters to come get a glance at. Barnum had bought the Fiji mermaid from the man who had presented to him, and he had given it to his assistant to pretend to have in his possession to get all these reporters' attention. During this process, Barnum was in the background crafting a story which abdicated him of any involvement whatsoever. He went to the press separately and grumbled that he unsuccessfully secured an exhibition of the mermaid, handing them 3 promotional wood carvings of the mermaid he had planned to use in advertisements for the display, but no longer needed. So he does that. He crafts this whole story that like he failed to buy the mermaid and he was bummed out about it, and the doctor refused to sell it to him, even though he had bought it a couple days before, like behind the scenes. He even goes to the point of like creating fake promotional material that he could give, that he was like, oh man, I made this stuff and I couldn't even buy it and it sucks. So he puts on a whole show. Meanwhile, while he's playing this act to reporters, in the background, he's printing 10,000 pamphlets advertising the mermaid without his involvement or name on them. He's just printing them. When the moment was right, Barnum released the pamphlets, which read that the Fiji mermaid would only be exhibited at a concert hall at the American Museum by Dr. Griffith for 1 week only. So this made-up character, who was Barnum's assistant, had apparently made an agreement with Barnum to temporarily exhibit in his museum. And so he created this. The reason Barnum was doing this is he was creating this limited time run, right? This mermaid was only going to be around for a week, all right? You had to come see it now. It's going to be gone. It's going to be gone. I wasn't able to buy it. I tried. I really did. He was creating this false sense of urgency so people would come and see the exhibit. And it worked. Lyman presented the exhibit to thousands under the guise of this doctor character. And Barnum wasn't present. Barnum was not there. He had no involvement whatsoever in exhibiting the Fiji mermaid. A week later, the mermaid inexplicably was moved to Barnum's museum with a charmed public who didn't ask questions as to why it was now there. Barnum had driven up the hype just to silently add it to his museum afterwards. People were way more interested in the mythos of this mermaid as a result from there on out. The Fiji mermaid made Barnum's museum the definitive most popular museum in New York, and he was able to pay off all of his debts. New York was now his, and he now looked to take his show on the road and overseas to become an international sensation. And that's all I have for the first half of this story, Blizz, is the early life and times of P.T. Barnum. Really interesting character.
When does Zac Efron? Is Zac Efron already in here?
Yes, actually, Zac Efron is Taylor. I think. I believe Zac Efron is Taylor from the.
Well, no, because Taylor's the grandfather. I thought.
No, okay, there's 2 Taylors, right? There's Taylor, his grandfather, and then there's Taylor, the guy that tried to get him lynched. You remember that guy?
Yeah, that's
Zac
Efron.
Is Efron? We're not to the Barnum and Bailey. We're not even to the Circus arc. He has a whole Circus arc.
No, we're not.
It's Turner. Sorry, that's who I'm thinking of. Zac Efron, I believe, is Bailey. I don't think Zac Efron is.
Oh, so we're not there yet.
We're not there yet. I don't think.
Okay,
Who's he supposed to be?
Zendaya arc.
Theater producer Philip Carlisle. No, never mind. Yeah, I don't think we're to that era yet because Barnum is not doing his circus act yet. We're still before anything that is presented in The Greatest Showman. Granted, I watched The Greatest Showman and it's not even close.
It's not good.
It's not even close.
No, The Greatest Showman is like actually a very fucked up movie.
Yeah, it's also just like not very good. I don't know if you watched it and liked it, but when I watched it, it was like it wasn't like unwatchable, but I was like, this is not great. I'm not like super entertained by this.
I think there's like 2 songs that I like from it, and I go, "We've done it."
Yeah, we did. Yay, we did it.
He did it.
So what do you think of old P.T. Barnum, Blizz?
I was really confused in why you said that he reminded you of me, and I was like, okay, what the hell? That's just very rude.
I didn't say that.
It's probably the blackface.
I did not.
It's probably that, and I was like, damn, Crub, didn't know you were racist.
Oh my God! Nope. I didn't say that. I didn't. Nope. That's not. That is not the assumption I made. That is not the assumption I made. Oh my God.
No, I
anyway.
think he's a piece of shit, and also that I think his entire family is a piece of shit, which I was standing on that very early, like in the beginning. I was like,
you did pick it out.
Sucks.
Quite early. Yes, this is an everyone sucks here situation. Yeah, you did pick it up pretty early. His grandfather kind of like, he definitely took it to the next level, but his grandfather definitely planted the seeds for him to be like straight up evil.
Yeah.
Like, but the dude is like a natural like manipulator too. Like you can understand like he really has like a deep understanding of like human psychology, even though he hasn't like studied it from like a academic perspective. The dude knows how to get people to fucking give him money. Like it's there's a reason he's known as like the originator of the corporation and the culture industry as a whole, the monetization of art and performance.
I looked up his zodiac sign. He's a Cancer. This explains so much.
That I don't know what that means.
He's in touch with people's emotions, so he can easily manipulate his way into situations.
Oh man, well that's Barnum. That's episode 1. That's episode. Blizz, thank you for coming on. Blizz, where can people find you?
You can find me in all places under Blizzbear, BLIZZB3AR, unless you're on Twitch, and it's twitch.tv/Blizz.
Blizz like
Is
jizz.
that good?
Hey, thank you, Blizz. That was great. Hey, that was great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. Thanks, man.